Hello, welcome back to the core Bluetooth tutorials. In the previous episodes, I've gone over some of the code that you need to write in order to interact with Bluetooth devices from an iOS device in Swift, if you're creating some kind of Bluetooth using app. In this episode, I want to go more in depth on just the objects that you're going to use, generally speaking, and the overarching process that you're working through. So we're going to look less at the code and more at the core concepts involved here. So let's jump in. Let's look at the four core classes. First is the CB Central Manager. That's going to be the object that's responsible for managing Bluetooth operations on your iOS device. So that's the boss. It manages the phone's radio, scanning for and connecting to devices. Next is the CB Peripheral. In this video, we're going to pretend that this is a Bluetooth thermostat for all of the examples, and it might have some peculiar functions that a thermostat wouldn't normally have, but we're going to go with it. Now, this thermostat is our CB Peripheral. It's the device that you're connecting to, that you're interacting with from your phone, and it represents the external hardware that you are interacting with. Now, the CB service is a category or a logical grouping of data points. So that might be a heart rate service for some kind of like heart monitor Bluetooth device that you're displaying in here, or on your thermostat, you might have a temperature service that manages the temperature that this is trying to set the room to, and then it might also have a maybe a thermometer service that tells you the current temperature of the room, or maybe those would be one service, and then maybe it'll also have like a battery. Maybe this is a battery powered thermostat, and it'll have a battery service that informs you of its charge and how much electricity it has. And then finally, you have the CB characteristic. Now, in each of those services, let's say you have a temperature service and a battery service, you're going to have different characteristics. Maybe in that temperature service, you have the current temperature and the desired temperature. And then in your battery service, those are each CB characteristics. And then in your battery service, you have the CB characteristic that is the charge of your device. And that's probably all you'd have in that service, and that would be another characteristic. So these are the data points or the actual values that you are reading or writing. Onwards. Eventually. Come on, Mr. Computer. Here we go. So here is the core challenge in dealing with Bluetooth devices. The core challenge is that things are happening asynchronously, and they're not only happening asynchronously in an expected way where you might do like an API call and then it comes back, but in like a scanning, waiting for the other device to do something way. And I'll elaborate on what that means. Though I guess you kind of do that in a lot of API calls. Let's say you have your central device and you call central.connect. So you found a Bluetooth device in the vicinity. That's this guy, and you say, "Hey, connect, man," and it's connecting to the device. Now you have to wait around for some unknown amount of time for these two devices to open communication. That's where you have callback functions, and you essentially delegate an object to handle these callback functions. So this device, your CB Central, is going to say, "Hey, we found this device, connect to it." And it's going to send out a signal, and eventually they're going to go, "Whoop, we've paired." Now, once that event happens, you need to have some object that's going to handle what you want to have happen when that connection takes place. So let's read these bullet points. Bluetooth actions are not instant. We cannot freeze the app while we wait for a connection to complete. Our code calls a function, but the result arrives at some unknown time. We need a way for our app to listen for these future events and react when they happen. So that's why we use the delegate pattern. Here we go. A tale of two listeners, the delegate pattern. A CB Central Manager delegate is what is going to listen to the phone's Bluetooth state. So it's going to ask questions like, did update state? Is the Bluetooth radio powered on? So in your phone device, there's a little Bluetooth radio. It manages connecting with Bluetooth devices. Is that on? Is it not? That's its state. Did discover, have we found a peripheral? So this is going to track, have we discovered this peripheral? I've got a, this is like a Bluetooth speaker. Have we found this peripheral? It's going to, this did discover delegate is going to get executed whenever this device, some device gets discovered. Did connect. So once you've sent out that connect command, it's going to listen to when that connection event takes place. Then we've got a CB peripheral delegate. So that's going to be an object responsible for listening to events that happen in the peripheral device. Did discover services. Has the map of the device been found? And we'll essentially talk about that, but the map is like these services, your battery and your temperature service. Have we found those, right? Once that connection takes place, you're going to have an understanding of what services are available on this device, and that search has to take place. Did discover characteristics. Have the actual data points been found? Did update value 4. Has new data arrived from the device? These are listeners. They listen. Anyway, I think you get the point. Maybe. Hopefully. There are two ways to actually get data from a peripheral device. Read versus notify. So, way number one is read. You send a one-time request, and the peripheral is going to tell you the answer. So this is going to look something like peripheral.readValue4, some characteristics. So let's say you've got the thermostat, your phone. You say, hey, Mr. Thermostat, from your phone, what is the temperature? And the thermostat's going to get that data, send it back to your phone. What is the current battery level? What is the device's serial number? Things like that. Then you have the notify, which is how you subscribe to a stream of data. So this is executed with peripheral dot, and peripheral, again, that object, that's a CB peripheral object. Peripheral dot set notify value true for characteristic. This is essentially saying, tell me every time the heart rate changes, or stream the accelerometer data. So if we have this thermometer or this thermostat that's tracking the thermometer or the temperature of some room, and you want to display that on the device, you have to subscribe to that stream of data so that whenever the temperature changes on here, you see that pop up in your phone's user interface. Now, if you're saying like, oh, I want to change the desired temperature, and you set that on your phone, that's going to be a request. Maybe not. That'll be a write request, where from the phone you're going to send information to the device. It's like, hey man, like change this value, and then in the device somewhere it'll change those bits to say the new value is 35,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and then your room is going to explode. All right. Let's talk about the full life cycle from scan to subscription. What does this look like? So essentially, you're going to create a CB central object, and you can look at the previous episodes to see more what this code looks like. Or I'll probably have a link in the description below to a repo with all this information, or with example code. But essentially, you've got some CB central. You've got a CB central object that manages all of the code, or all of the data for your phone. And then you've also got a peripheral, right? And those devices that you discovered get stored as CB peripherals. Central.scan for peripherals, that's that first step where maybe you're on your phone, you click, bam, scan for peripherals, or you just open the app, you want to start scanning. It's going to start scanning, and whenever it finds a peripheral device, it's going to call the did discover method. That's because it is all of these central operations are delegated to the object that you're working with, right? So this function exists somewhere in that object, and then each time you discover a peripheral, it's going to call that, and then you can have some things happen in there, whatever that is. Maybe you add each discovered device to a list, and it displays that list to the user. or it's filtering out any device where the ID doesn't match the ID that you're looking for. That would be in the case of an app where you've created this specific thermostat and you only want to manage this thermostat from this app. So you're going to have some code in there that says, hey, if this is our thermostat, then say, hey, we discovered it. Click this button to connect, or automatically call central.connect. And if it's not this device, then just ignore it. But that did discover method gets called, and then central.connect, you're going to call that somehow with user input or just automatically in that did discover function. Then once it does connect, so that's a separate action, you find the device and then you connect to the device. Now what you've connected to that device, you can do a series of things, but the main thing you'll probably want to do automatically is call peripheral.didDiscoverServices. So once you find and connect to that device, you're going to store it as a CB peripheral. Then you're going to call Discover Services on that object. That's going to allow you to get a map of the services available. You probably want to do that automatically because no user is going to expect themselves to have to take that step. Obviously, when you connect your phone to a speaker, it doesn't ask you to discover the services of the speaker. It just does that for you. Then peripheral.discover, so then did discover services. It goes, okay, what services does this have? Okay, now we've stored its services in this object, and those are going to be another object called a CB service or something like that. Then you're going to do cb.discover characteristics because you want to go and see what kind of data do you have access to. And then once you discover those characteristics, it's going to call did discover characteristics. And now you're probably going to want to store those as well in your object. And then you have the option to start setting data. You have a full map. You have full access to your peripheral. So now you're going to want to call functions, set up functions that are either going to let you manually set data or you're going to subscribe. So peripheral.set notify value true. That's going to create that subscription so that you can automatically read data whenever it changes on that peripheral device. Or you'll set up some functions that says like, hey, set this value for this peripheral. Did update value for. And so anytime when you subscribe to a value, that's just this last part, did update value for, whenever that value changes on your peripheral, it's going to give you that information, and that callback is going to happen. And then you can extract that information from your function, store it in your object, display to the user, all that kind of bullshit. Anyway, onward. So that's essentially the full life cycle. That's what you're going to be doing. At this last part, there should be kind of a branching thing here, which is send read requests, send write requests, or subscribe to value changes. Those are essentially the three main things that you're actually going to be doing with that data on that device. And you'll be doing that with each characteristic, or you can do that with each characteristic. And there's infinite ways that you can do that. But the goal of this isn't to show you one way of doing things. It's to give you the larger picture of what's going on behind the scenes, and then you can figure out what the hell you want to do. So here's a little example function. This is something that is going to happen inside of a CB peripheral delegate, so some object that's responsible for managing a peripheral. This delegate method is called every time a notified characteristics value changes. So func peripheral did update value for some characteristic, and then you have your error handler or your error. Guard let data equal characteristic dot value else return. That's just saying like, hey, it says that the value updated. Let's make sure that it actually has information. If you know much about optionals, then you should know that this value is an optional just by reading this, because you're unwrapping it with a guard statement. Then we're going to go through each characteristic UUID. So depending on the characteristic, each characteristic is going to have its own unique identifier. You can create an enum to represent each identifier that's available in this device, and then you're going to run through, and this is let BPM equal parse heart rate from data. You're getting that data, you're displaying it through a print statement. You could also update heart rate label with BPM, call another function. Or if this is maybe some kind of observable object, maybe you stored in a published property somewhere else. Body, sensor, location, UUID. This is just another characteristic, another data point that you can access, and then you're gonna want to grab that data and show it to the user. Anyway, we're gonna ignore that last slide. So that's essentially how this general system works. I hope that this overview and this more abstract description of core Bluetooth is helpful. If it's not, and it's just more confusing, and you want more code illustrations, then I could do that. But I think in this era of AI, it's much more useful to have conceptual overviews than specific code descriptions. So yeah, that's that. I hope you learned some knowledge. Go make some Bluetooth devices, and one of these days I might create a video where we actually create our own peripheral and we try and interact with that with like Arduino or something. I think that would be a lot of fun. I think that would be a ton of fun. I don't think there's much Swift to hardware tutorials out there, so let me know if that's what you want. Subscribe, comment, like, and quit the wishing, quit the bitching, start the mission. See you later, folks.